Commander Park Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the battleship Terra's Hope, watching the stars through the massive viewport. The ship moved silently through space toward Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Confederation. His hands gripped the metal railing as he read the emergency message one more time. The message was simple but terrifying. Something ancient had awakened in the dark space between galaxies, something that ate entire star systems. The Confederation needed every species to send their best leaders to Nexus Prime immediately. Park had served in the Terran Defense Fleet for 15 years. He had fought pirates, explored new worlds, and helped keep peace between different alien races. But he had never seen a message marked with the highest emergency code, the kind of code that meant the galaxy itself was in danger. "Sir, we will reach Nexus Prime in 2 hours," said Lieutenant Kim Jamin from the navigation station. The young officer's voice was steady, but Park could see worry in his eyes. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Park replied. He looked back at the stars and wondered what could be so terrible that it frightened the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The Galactic Confederation was huge. Over 200 different species worked together across 3 arms of the Milky Way galaxy. Some races were so old they remembered when the galaxy was young. Others had technology that seemed like magic to humans. The Eldari could see the future. The Quantari could bend reality itself. The Thexians could travel through time. Humans had joined the Confederation only 50 years ago. Most alien races still saw them as children playing with toys. Human technology was simple compared to what other species had. Human ships were slow. Human weapons were basic. But humans were stubborn, and they never gave up easily. The Terra's Hope dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Nexus Prime. Park had visited the capital world many times, but it always amazed him. The planet was covered with crystal cities that reached into the clouds. Ships from hundreds of different worlds filled the orbital stations. Each ship was different, showing the unique style of its builders. But today something was wrong. Too many ships crowded the space around Nexus Prime. Park could see massive war vessels from the militant Karathi Empire. The peaceful Verdani had brought their living ships that looked like giant trees. Even the mysterious shadow ships of the Nethys were here. "This is bigger than I thought," Park said quietly. The Terra's Hope docked at Station 7, one of the smaller orbital platforms. Park took a shuttle down to the planet's surface where the Grand Assembly Hall waited. The hall was enormous, built to hold representatives from all Confederation species. Today it was completely full. Park found his seat in the human section. Ambassador Lee So-young was already there, looking worried. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 20 years learning alien languages and customs. If anyone could represent humanity well, it was her. "Commander Park," she said with a nod. "I am glad you are here. The preliminary reports are worse than we feared." "What exactly are we facing?" Park asked. Before Lee could answer, the great lights dimmed. The Elder Council entered the hall. These were the oldest and wisest beings in the galaxy. The ancient Eldari moved like flowing water. The crystal beings of Quantar sparkled with inner light. The massive stone creatures called Founders rumbled with each step. Elder Vexhai of the Eldari stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice filled every mind in the hall without using sound. "Children of the galaxy, we face the end of all things." Images appeared in the air above the assembly. They showed dark space between galaxies where no stars shone. Something moved in that darkness. Shapes that hurt to look at directly. Things that seemed to eat light itself. "The Void Seekers have awakened," Elder Vexhai continued. "For millions of years they slept in the spaces between galaxies. They feed on the life force of entire star systems. They consume everything, planets, stars, even the space around them. They leave only empty darkness behind." The images changed to show star systems dying. Planets turning gray and lifeless in seconds. Stars growing dim and cold. Entire civilizations vanishing without a trace. Our deepest space monitors detected them 3 days ago. They are moving toward our galaxy at speeds we cannot measure. At their current pace, they will reach the outer rim worlds in 6 months. A Quantari representative stood up. His crystal body flashed with different colors as he spoke in mathematical equations that the translation systems turned into words. We have calculated their power levels. A single void seeker can drain a star. In hours, the approaching swarm contains millions of entities. Voices erupted throughout the hall. Some species demanded immediate military action. Others suggested hiding in other dimensions. The Karathi wanted to fight. The Verdani spoke of fleeing to distant galaxies. Elder Vexhai raised one long arm for silence. We have already tried everything. The Eldari have looked into the future and seen only darkness. The Quantari have tested their reality-shaping weapons against Void Seeker fragments. Nothing works. The Thexians attempted to travel back in time to prevent their awakening, but the entities exist outside normal time. The hall fell silent. Park felt cold despite the warm air. These were the most powerful beings in the galaxy. If they said something was impossible, then it truly was. What are our options? Asked the representative from the hegemony worlds. Another elder stepped forward. This one was made of living metal and spoke in tones like singing bells. We have developed evacuation protocols. The dimensional gate technology can transport our populations to the Andromeda galaxy. It will take time, but we can save most of our people. You mean run away? The question came from the Karathi section. General Thakmor stood with his forearms crossed. The warrior race had never retreated from any enemy. We mean survive, the metal elder replied. The Void Seekers cannot be fought with conventional means. They cannot be reasoned with or bargained with. They exist only to consume. Our only choice is to leave this galaxy and start again elsewhere. The debate continued for hours. Species after species presented their most advanced weapons and technologies. The hegemony showed planet-killing bombs. The Nethys revealed shadow weapons that could cut through reality. The builders offered to construct massive fortress worlds, but each presentation ended the same way. The technology was not enough. The Void Seekers were too powerful, too numerous, and too alien for any known weapon to stop them. As the assembly prepared for a final vote, Ambassador Lee stood up. What about cooperation? What if all our technologies were combined into one effort? Elder Vexhai's mental voice carried sadness. Young human, we have already calculated that possibility. Even with every species contributing their greatest secrets, we could only delay the Void Seekers by a few years. The mathematics are clear. This galaxy cannot be saved. The vote was quick and decisive. The Galactic Confederation would begin. Immediate evacuation to Andromeda Galaxy. Essential personnel would leave first, followed by the general population. The outer rim worlds would be abandoned to buy time for the core worlds to evacuate. As representatives filed out of the hall, Park caught up with Ambassador Lee. What about humanity's colonies? What about Earth? Lee's face was grim. We will be among the last to evacuate. Our technology is considered non-essential. Most of our worlds are in the outer rim. Park looked around at the alien representatives, hurrying to their ships. Fear filled their faces. These were beings who had mastered time, space, and reality itself, but they were running from an enemy they could not understand or fight. Ambassador, he said slowly, what if they are wrong? What if there is another way? Lee shook her head. Commander, these civilizations are millions of years older than us. Their science is beyond our comprehension. If they say the situation is hopeless, then it is. But as they walked back to their shuttle, Park could not shake the feeling that something was missing. The galaxy's greatest minds had looked at this problem and seen only one solution: run away. Park had learned something in his 15 years of service. Sometimes the obvious solution was not the right solution. Sometimes you had to look at a problem from a completely different angle. As the Terra's Hope prepared to leave Nexus Prime, Park made a decision that would change everything. He opened a communication channel to Earth Defense Command. This is Commander Park reporting from Nexus Prime. I need to speak with the Science Division immediately. We have a problem that needs a human solution. The stars watched silently as humanity prepared to do what it had always done best. When the wise said something was impossible, Humans found a way to prove them wrong. 3 weeks had passed since the emergency assembly on Nexus Prime. The galaxy was in chaos as species after species began their evacuation to Andromeda. Massive transport ships filled with refugees moved through the void toward dimensional gates that would carry them to safety. Dr. Kim Tae-ho sat in his laboratory on Earth, staring at data that made no sense. The Confederation had shared basic information about the Void Seekers before they started running away. But the more Kim studied the data, the more something bothered him. "Doctor, you have been here for 18 hours straight," said his assistant, Dr. Park Nari. She placed a cup of coffee next to his computer terminal. "Maybe you should rest." Kim rubbed his tired eyes. "I cannot rest. There is something here that everyone missed. Look at these energy readings from the destroyed star systems." Park leaned over his shoulder to look at the screen. The numbers showed how the Void Seekers consumed energy from stars and planets. But Kim had organized the data in a new way that revealed a pattern. "The Void Seekers do not attack randomly," Kim said, pointing at the display. "Look at which systems they hit first. The Quantari Research Station with their reality-bending equipment, the Eldari Prediction Center with their future-seeing technology, the Thexian Time Laboratory." Park studied the data more carefully. "You are right. They went after the most advanced technology first. But why?" "I think the Void Seekers are attracted to certain types of energy," Kim explained. "The more complex the technology, the stronger the signal it sends. Advanced civilizations are like bright lights to these creatures." This discovery was important, but Kim needed more information. He opened a communication channel to the Outer Rim colonies where humanity was building defensive positions. Most alien species had already abandoned these worlds, but humans refused to leave. The transmission connected to New Sol, a mining colony in the Kepler system. Captain Choi Min-ho appeared on the screen. His uniform was dirty and he looked exhausted. Behind him, Kim could see workers building defensive barriers. "Dr. Kim, good to hear from you," Choi said. "We could use some good news out here." "Captain, I need you to do something for me. Can you scan for unusual energy signatures in your system? Specifically, look for quantum resonance patterns." Choi nodded to someone off-screen. "Lieutenant Yoon is running the scan now." "What are we looking for?" "I believe the Void Seekers track their prey using quantum frequencies. If I am right, we might be able to hide from them or even confuse them." The scan results appeared on Kim's screen. New Sol showed very low quantum resonance compared to the abandoned Quantari facilities in nearby systems. The human colony was almost invisible to the kind of sensors the Void Seekers might use. "Captain, I need you to reduce all advanced technology use on your colony. Turn off anything that uses quantum processing or dimensional manipulation." "Doctor, most of our defensive systems use that technology. If we turn them off, we will be defenseless against normal attacks. Trust me on this, Captain. I think our simple technology might be an advantage for once." While Kim worked on his theory, the evacuation continued throughout the galaxy, but not everyone was leaving. In the Karathi Empire, General Thakmor gathered his remaining battle fleets. The proud warrior race could not accept running from any enemy. "We will make our stand at the Forge Worlds," Thakmor announced to his commanders. "If we must die, we will die fighting." The peaceful Verdani also refused to abandon their home systems completely. Their living ships could grow and heal themselves, making them harder to destroy than metal vessels. A few Verdani gardener captains stayed behind to tend their world trees and protect the younger colonies. Ambassador Lee So-young found herself in an impossible position. The Confederation Council had sealed the dimensional gates to prevent any infected energy from following them to Andromeda. Humanity was cut off from the fleeing civilizations and their advanced technology. "They will not share their defensive systems with us," Lee reported to President An Ji-woo during an emergency cabinet meeting. "The Eldari said our primitive understanding would only make the technology less effective." President An was a small woman with steel in her voice. "Then we will use what we have. How many colonies have refused evacuation orders?" "All of them, Madam President. Even the civilian populations are staying. They say Earth is their home, and they will not abandon it." This stubborn refusal to run puzzled the remaining alien allies. The Karathi understood fighting against impossible odds, but Humans seemed to have no logical reason for staying. Their technology was weak. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were basic. Why would they choose death over escape? Captain Choi learned the answer. When the first Void Seeker scouts reached his system, the creatures appeared without warning, dark shapes that seemed to bend light around them. They moved toward the abandoned Quantari research station like sharks following blood. All ships, hold position. Choi ordered his small defense fleet. Do not power up weapon systems. Do not use active sensors. Let them pass. The Void Seekers swept through the system, draining the energy from the empty Quantari station in minutes. The massive facility crumbled to dust as its power was consumed. But the creatures ignored New Sol completely. The human colony was too simple, too primitive to register as a threat or a meal. Dr. Kim was right, whispered Lieutenant Yoon. They cannot see us. But the victory was temporary. Long range. Sensors detected larger Void Seeker formations moving through nearby systems. These were not scouts but full hunting groups. They consumed entire star systems, leaving only cold, empty space behind. On Earth, Dr. Kim worked frantically with a team of scientists from around the world. Dr. Song Mi-kyung, a specialist in alien biology, studied the few Void Seeker remains that had been recovered from previous encounters. These creatures exist partially outside our normal space, Song explained to the research team. That is why conventional weapons pass right through them. But if they can affect our reality, then our reality should be able to affect them somehow. Engineer Kang Dong-hyun had been working on this problem from a different angle. What if we cannot hurt them directly, but we can disrupt their feeding process? They need to establish a connection with normal matter to drain energy. If we can break that connection, we could starve them, Kim finished the thought, or at least make it harder for them to feed. The team began working on a device they called the Resonance Nullifier. It would generate interference patterns that could disrupt the quantum frequencies the Void Seekers used. But the power requirements were enormous and the device could only work at very close range. We would need to get within a few thousand kilometers of a Void Seeker to use this, Kang explained. No ship could survive that close. Then we build ships that do not need to survive, Kim replied grimly. We build them to complete one mission, and one mission only. News of the human research reached the fleeing alien civilizations through secure communication channels. Most dismissed the reports as desperate fantasy from a doomed species. The Giger Eldari had already seen all possible futures and none showed humanity surviving. But a few alien scientists were curious. Dr. Zethkal of the Quantari sent a message to Dr. Kim through quantum encryption. Young human, your primitive approach is interesting but flawed. The mathematics clearly show that simple disruption fields cannot affect Void Seeker feeding patterns. You need quantum manipulation at the molecular level, something your species lacks the knowledge to achieve. Kim read the message and smiled. That is exactly what they do not understand. We are not trying to outthink the Void Seekers. We are trying to confuse them. The first test of the Resonance Nullifier came sooner than expected. A Void Seeker hunting group entered the Sol system, drawn by the energy signatures of Earth's orbital stations. Captain Han Sol-bei volunteered to pilot the prototype device aboard her destroyer Sol's Pride. This is a one-way mission, Kim warned her over the communication system. The power surge will destroy your ship's systems. You will have maybe 5 minutes before complete failure. 5 minutes is enough, Han replied. My crew understands the risks. We all volunteered. The Sol's Pride moved toward the approaching Void Seekers at maximum speed. The dark creatures noticed the ship, but seemed confused by its simple technology. They had expected the bright quantum signatures of advanced civilizations, not the basic fusion engines and steel hulls of human construction. When Han activated the Resonance Nullifier, space around the Void Seekers filled with interference patterns that hurt to look at. The creatures recoiled, their feeding tentacles withdrawing from the orbital stations they had been draining. For 5 precious minutes, the Void Seekers could not feed. 3 orbital stations had time to evacuate their populations before the Sol's Pride exploded in a brilliant flash of overloaded fusion reactors. The evacuation transports made it safely to Earth's surface. Captain Han Sol-bei and her crew were dead, But they had proven something important. The Void Seekers could be confused. They could be stopped, even if only temporarily. Dr. Kim watched the battle data with tears in his eyes. The resonance nullifier worked, but the cost was terrible. Each use required the sacrifice of an entire ship and crew. "We need a better way," he said to his team. "We need to find." 2 months after the defense of Earth, humanity was transforming itself into something the galaxy had never seen before. Every human world had become a fortress. Every civilian had become a soldier. Every factory was building weapons designed to fight an enemy that should have been impossible to defeat. General Yang Sok-jin stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Holographic displays showed human fleets moving through space toward positions that made no sense to traditional military thinking. Instead of forming defensive lines, human ships were spreading out in small groups throughout the galaxy's outer rim. "Status report," Yang ordered. "Operation Starlight Shield is 70% complete," replied Colonel Bae Young-sik. "We have resonance nullifier platforms deployed in 43 star systems. Mobile strike teams are ready in another 60 systems." Yang nodded. The plan was insane by any normal military standard. Instead of concentrating their forces to defend the most important worlds, humanity was spreading their ships across thousands of light years. They were deliberately placing themselves in the path of the Void Seekers. "General, we are receiving a transmission from the Karathi fleet," announced Lieutenant Park Min-seo. "General Thakmore wants to speak with you." The massive Karathi warrior appeared on the main screen. His forearms were crossed and his expression showed confusion mixed with respect. "Human Yang, your battle plan makes no sense. You scatter your forces like leaves in the wind. How can you defend anything with such tactics?" Yang smiled. "We are not defending anything, General. We are hunting. Hunting what cannot be killed? No. Hunting what has never been properly hunted before." The strategy had come from Dr. Kim Taeho's research team. They had discovered that Void Seekers did not just consume energy randomly. The creatures followed feeding patterns that had remained unchanged for millions of years. They moved in predictable routes, always seeking the strongest quantum signatures. But humanity's simple technology created a different kind of signature. The Void Seekers could sense human ships, but they could not understand what they were sensing. It was like trying to see colors that did not exist. Dr. Song Mi-kyung had made another breakthrough while studying Void Seeker remains. Working in her laboratory on Mars, she had found something that changed everything. "The creatures exist in multiple dimensions at once," she explained to the research team during their daily video conference. "They can reach into our reality to feed, but most of their body remains in dark matter space. That explains why our weapons pass through them," said engineer Kang Dong-hyun from his workshop on Luna. "We are only hitting the small part that exists in our dimension." "But what if we could hit the part that exists in dark matter space?" asked Dr. Lim Jun-ho from the Orbital Research Station. Song's eyes lit up. "We would need weapons that could shift between dimensions. Weapons that could exist in both realities at the same time." The team began working on what they called phase torpedoes. These weapons used a combination of human engineering and salvaged alien technology from the abandoned Confederation facilities. The torpedoes could shift their dimensional frequency to match the Void Seekers. "The weapons will not destroy them," Kang explained during a test firing. "But they will hurt them. They will make it harder for the creatures to feed and easier for our resonance nullifiers to work." The first combat test came at the Tau Ceti system. Captain Choi Min-ho had been promoted to admiral and given command of the 3rd Strike Group. His ships were a mixture of human destroyers, Karathi battle cruisers, and a few Verdani living vessels. "Target approaching," reported his sensor operator. "Single Void Seeker, large class." The creature was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. It moved through space like oil flowing through water, leaving a trail of darkness behind it. Traditional sensors could barely track it, but the modified human equipment could see its quantum signature clearly. "All ships, maintain formation," Choi ordered. "Do not let it know we are here until we are ready to strike." The human ships used their simple fusion drives to approach slowly. Their basic technology created almost no quantum disturbance. The Void Seeker ignored them completely, focused on draining energy from an abandoned Quantari mining station. When they reached optimal range, Choi gave the order. Fire-phase torpedoes, 20 modified torpedoes launched from the human ships. As they flew toward the Void Seeker, their dimensional frequency shifted. The weapons became visible as flickering lights that hurt to look at directly. The torpedoes struck the creature and passed into dark matter space. For the first time in recorded history, a Void Seeker screamed. The sound came not through air, but through quantum vibrations that every living being in the system could feel. The creature recoiled, its feeding tentacles withdrawing from the mining station. Dark fluid that might have been blood leaked from its wounds into normal space. Activate resonance nullifiers, Choi ordered. The interference field surrounded the Void Seeker, confusing its senses and preventing it from feeding, but the creature was learning. It began to change its quantum frequency, trying to adapt to the human weapons. "It is getting used to our attack," warned the weapons officer. "The nullifiers are losing effectiveness." "Then we try something else," Choi replied. He opened a channel to the Karathi ships. "General Thakmore, your plasma cannons are ready?" "Always ready for battle," came the reply. "Target the wounds made by our phase torpedoes. Fire everything you have." The Karathi weapons were brutal things that turned matter into superheated plasma. Normally they would have no effect on a Void Seeker. But the phase torpedoes had created openings between dimensions. The plasma cannons fired through these wounds directly into dark matter space. The Void Seeker's scream became a roar of pain and rage. It began to retreat, moving away from the human fleet at tremendous speed. For the first time, in millions of years, one of the ancient devourers had been forced to run from its prey. News of the victory spread through the remaining resistance forces across the galaxy. The few alien species who had stayed behind sent congratulations and requests for the new weapon designs. Even some of the evacuating fleets sent messages asking if humanity needed assistance. But Dr. Kim knew the victory was only temporary. The Void Seeker they had fought was a scout, not a full member of the main swarm. Intelligence reports showed thousands of larger creatures moving toward the galaxy's edge. "We need something bigger," Kim told President Ahn during their weekly briefing. "The phase torpedoes can hurt individual Void Seekers, but the main swarm contains millions of them. What do you suggest, Doctor?" "We need a weapon that can affect multiple creatures at once, something that can create a chain reaction through their dimensional connection." The research team began working on their most ambitious project yet. They called it the Quantum Cascade Generator. The device would create a wave of dimensional energy that could spread from one Void Seeker to another, forcing them all back into dark matter space. But building the device required resources humanity did not have. The power requirements were enormous. The exotic materials needed could only be found in the cores of dead stars, and the device could only be deployed from very close range. Help came from an unexpected source. The Verdani Gardner captain, Veltani, contacted Earth with an offer. Her living ship could grow the organic components needed for the Cascade Generator. In exchange, she wanted the plans for human phase torpedoes to protect her remaining world trees. "The garden minds have been calculating," Veltani explained through the translation system. "Your human mathematics are crude, but effective. We will help you build this weapon." More offers arrived from other species. The Karathi provided rare metals from their forge worlds. A group of rogue Quantari scientists shared their knowledge of dimensional manipulation. Even a few Thexian time travelers appeared with components that would not be invented for another 1,000 years. "Why are they helping us now?" President Ahn asked Ambassador Lee. "They could have evacuated safely with the others." "I think they are starting to believe we might actually win," Lee replied. "And they want to be part of the victory instead of part of the retreat." The first Cascade Generator was completed 3 weeks before the main Void Seeker swarm reached the galaxy. Captain Han Sol-bi, sister of the hero who had died testing the first resonance nullifier, volunteered to pilot the test mission. Her ship, the Busan's Resolve, was more than just a vessel. It was a combination of human engineering, Karathi weapons, Verdani living technology, and mysterious Thexian modifications that existed in several time periods at once. This is a one-way trip, General Yang warned her during the final briefing. The cascade generator will destroy your ship when it activates. My sister showed us the way, Han replied. Now I will finish what she started. The test target was a group of 12 Void Seekers that had entered the Vega system. They were feeding on the system's star, slowly draining its energy and turning it into a cold white dwarf. Han approached the creatures using the same stealth tactics that had worked before. Her ship's simple human technology made it nearly invisible to the Void Seekers, but as she got closer, the advanced alien components began to emit quantum signatures that the creatures could detect. They see me now, she reported. Beginning final approach. The main Void Seeker swarm had arrived at the galaxy's edge. Long-range sensors showed a sight that broke the minds of most beings who saw it. Millions of dark creatures moved through space like a living shadow, consuming everything in their path. Entire star systems vanished as they passed, leaving only cold emptiness behind. Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the battleship Young's Legacy. The massive vessel was a combination of human engineering and alien technology, built specifically to carry the ultimate cascade generator to the galactic center. Around him, the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for the most desperate mission ever attempted. Fleet status report, Park ordered. We have 800 human ships ready for departure, reported Captain Lee Ga-young, his new fleet coordinator. The Karathi have provided 300 battle cruisers. The Verdani sent 50 living ships. We also have volunteers from 12 other species who refused to evacuate. Park studied the tactical display. Over 1,100 ships against millions of Void Seekers. The mathematics were impossible, but humanity had stopped believing in impossible things months ago. What about the other evacuation fleets? Any word from the main Confederation forces? Several alien groups have sent messages of support, Lee replied. But they are already in Andromeda Galaxy. They cannot return in time to help. And the few that could return? Lee hesitated. They say our plan is suicide. They refuse to waste their advanced technology on what they call a hopeless gesture. Park was not surprised. The galaxy's most advanced species had already decided that the Milky Way was lost. They saw humanity's final mission as the desperate action of a primitive race that did not understand when to surrender. But some species were different. In the Karathi battle fleet, General Thakmor addressed his warriors over the ship's communication system. Today we fight beside humans, he announced in his deep voice. They are small and weak and use simple weapons. But they have something our enemies do not understand. They have courage that burns brighter than any star. The Karathi crews roared their approval. The warrior race had found something in humanity that reminded them of their own ancient values. Honor meant more than survival. Some things were worth dying for. On the Verdani living ships, the Gardner captains sang ancient songs about sacrifice and growth. Their vessels were not built for war, but they could heal damaged ships and provide life support for rescue operations. If humanity was going to throw away lives to save the galaxy, the Verdani would make sure those lives were not wasted. Dr. Kim Tae-ho worked frantically in his laboratory aboard the Young's Legacy. The ultimate cascade generator was 20 times larger than the prototype Captain Han had used. It required exotic matter that existed only in black hole event horizons and power sources that could drain entire stars. The calculations are complete, he reported to Admiral Park. If we can deploy this device within 1,000 kilometers of the galactic center black hole, the cascade effect will spread throughout the entire galaxy. Every Void Seeker will be pulled back into dark matter space permanently. What are our chances of reaching the target? Park asked. Kim's face was grim. The galactic center is defended by the largest concentration of Void Seekers we have ever seen. Millions of them, including ancient creatures the size of planets. Even if everything goes perfectly, we will lose most of the fleet before we reach deployment range. And if we fail to deploy, then the Void Seekers will consume the galactic center black hole. The energy release will allow them to spread to other galaxies. The entire local galaxy cluster will be devoured within a few years. Park looked out at the assembled fleet. 1,100 ships carrying the hopes of trillions of beings. Most of these vessels would never return home. Most of the crews knew they were flying toward certain death. "Send the final message to all ships," he ordered. "Today we prove that courage matters more than technology. Today we show the universe that some species never surrender." The fleet began its journey toward the galactic center using a route that no sane military commander would ever choose. Instead of taking the safe paths through empty space, they flew directly through Void Seeker territory. The plan required them to fight their way through the entire swarm. The first engagement came at the Horsehead Nebula. A group of 50 Void Seekers had been feeding on the gas clouds, turning the beautiful stellar nursery into a region of dead space. Admiral Park's advanced scouts detected them from 50 light-years away. "All ships maintain formation," Park ordered. "Use Protocol 7, hit them fast and keep moving." The human fleet had developed new tactics during the previous months of fighting. Instead of trying to destroy every enemy, they focused on confusion and disruption. Phase torpedoes created wounds between dimensions. Resonance nullifiers prevented feeding. Karathi plasma weapons exploited the dimensional gaps. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Void Seekers were defeated, but the cost was high. 12 human ships and 3 Karathi cruisers were lost. The creatures were learning to adapt to human tactics faster than expected. "They are sharing information somehow," observed Dr. Song Mi-kyung, who was monitoring the creatures' behavior. "Each group we fight knows about the tactics we used against previous groups." "How is that possible?" asked Captain Choi Min-ho, who was commanding the fleet's escort destroyers. "I think they have some kind of collective consciousness," Song replied. "When one Void Seeker learns something, they all learn it. We cannot surprise them the same way twice." This discovery forced Admiral Park to constantly change his tactics. Each battle required new approaches, new weapon combinations, new ways of confusing enemies that learned from every encounter. The fleet fought its way through the Orion Arm, leaving a trail of dead Void Seekers behind them. But for every creature they destroyed, 10 more appeared to take its place. The main swarm was so large that their victories barely made a difference. At the Sagittarius Arm junction, they encountered something that changed everything. A group of Void Seekers unlike any they had seen before. These creatures were ancient beyond imagination, so old they remembered when the galaxy was young. They were the size of moons and had power that could drain entire star clusters. "Admiral, our weapons are not working," reported the weapons officer. "The phase torpedoes are passing right through them. The resonance nullifiers have no effect." Park watched in horror as one of the ancient creatures reached out with tentacles made of pure, dark matter. It touched the destroyer Incheon's Dream and drained all power from the ship in seconds. The vessel became a lifeless hulk drifting in space. "All ships fall back," Park ordered. "We cannot fight these things with conventional weapons." But retreat was not an option. The ancient Void Seekers blocked the only route to the galactic center. If the fleet could not pass them, the mission would fail and the galaxy would be lost. Engineer Kang Dong-hyun had been working on a desperate idea during the journey. "Admiral, what if we do not try to hurt them? What if we try to hide from them instead?" "Explain." "These ancient creatures are so powerful they can sense our quantum signatures from light years away. But what if we make ourselves look like something they do not want to eat?" Kang's plan was brilliant and insane. He wanted to modify the ship's quantum signatures to match the Void Seekers themselves. The fleet would pretend to be part of the enemy swarm. "The risk is enormous," warned Dr. Kim. "If the deception fails, every ship will be detected and destroyed instantly. And if we do not try, we will be destroyed anyway," Park replied. "Do it." The modification took 18 hours of desperate work, while the fleet hid in the shadow of a dead star. Human engineers worked alongside Karathi technicians and Verdani biotechnology specialists. They turned warships into perfect imitations of their deadliest enemies. When the work was complete, the fleet looked like a group of young Void Seekers approaching the ancient Guardians. The deception worked perfectly. The moon-sized creatures ignored the disguised ships, assuming they were reinforcements arriving to help defend the galactic center. But the deception came with a terrible cost. Several human crews were affected by the quantum modifications. The false Void Seeker signatures began to change their minds, making them think and feel like the creatures they were imitating. "Admiral, we have a problem," reported the medical officer. 73 crew members are showing signs of consciousness drift. They are starting to think like Void Seekers. Park made the hardest decision of his military career. The affected crew members were isolated in shielded compartments. They would not be allowed to return to normal duty until after the mission was complete, if they survived that long. The fleet continued toward the galactic center, swimming through an ocean of enemies that could not see them. But each hour of deception made the quantum modifications stronger. More crew members began to drift away from human consciousness. "How much longer can we maintain this?" Park asked Dr. Kim. "Maybe 6 more hours before the modifications become permanent. After that, we will truly become what we are pretending to be." The galactic center appeared on their sensors like a vision from a nightmare. The supermassive black hole was surrounded by millions of Void Seekers feeding on its energy. The creatures had formed a living shell around the black hole, drinking. The quantum cascade began as a whisper in the fabric of space itself. Dr. Kim Tae-ho watched his instruments as the ultimate cascade generator activated, sending waves of dimensional energy through the galactic center. The device was working, but something was wrong. "The cascade is not spreading fast enough," Kim reported to Admiral Park over the communication system. "The Void Seekers are adapting to the frequency. They are learning to resist the effect." Around the Young's legacy, millions of dark creatures pressed closer. The ancient Void Seekers had arrived, their moon-sized bodies creating gravitational distortions that tore apart nearby ships. The human fleet was being destroyed piece by piece. "How long do we have?" Park asked. "At this rate, maybe 10 minutes before the cascade fails completely. We need more power, or we need to get closer to the black hole's event horizon." Captain Lee Ga-young checked the ship's status. "Admiral, we are already at maximum approach distance. If we get any closer, the black hole's gravity will tear us apart. Then we need more power," Park decided. "Signal all remaining ships. Tell them to redirect their fusion reactors to boost our generator." The order was essentially asking every surviving ship to commit suicide. By redirecting their reactors, they would lose life support, propulsion, and defensive systems. But without hesitation, the responses came back. Karathi Battle Group 7, redirecting power. Verdani Living Ship Garden of Hope, sharing energy. Human Destroyer Soul's Vengeance, all power to the generator. One by one, the surviving ships began to go dark as their power flowed into the Young's legacy. But the sacrifice was working. The cascade effect grew stronger, spreading faster through the Void Seeker swarm. On Earth, the evacuation fleets in Yoimiito, Andromeda Galaxy were receiving real-time updates through quantum communication arrays. In the command ship of the Eldari evacuation fleet, Elder Vex High watched the battle with amazement. "Impossible," he whispered to his aide. "The humans are actually affecting the Void Seekers on a galactic scale. Our future sight showed this could never happen." "Perhaps our sight was clouded by our own certainty," the aide replied. "We saw defeat because we expected defeat." Similar conversations were happening throughout the evacuated fleets. The Quantari scientists were analyzing the cascade generator's performance. The mathematical equations showed that human engineering should not be able to create such effects. "Their approach is completely wrong by our standards," reported Chief Mathematician Kixtal to the Quantari Council. "They are using brute force methods where we would use elegant quantum manipulation. But their crude approach is actually more effective against the Void Seekers' adaptive defenses." Back at the Galactic Center, the battle was reaching its climax. The cascade effect had forced thousands of Void Seekers back into dark matter space, but millions more remained. The ancient creatures were fighting back, sending waves of dark energy that disrupted the generator's operation. "Admiral, the generator is overheating," reported Chief Engineer Park Nari. "The exotic matter containment is failing. We have maybe 5 minutes before complete breakdown." Admiral Park made a decision that would echo through galactic history. "All hands, abandon ship." Transfer to escape pods and get clear of the explosion radius. Sir, someone needs to stay and monitor the generator, Captain Lee pointed out. The cascade requires constant adjustment to maintain effectiveness. I will stay, Park replied. This is my mission and my responsibility. With respect, Admiral, you are needed to command the remaining fleet, Lee said firmly. I will stay and complete the generator activation. Before Park could argue, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The ancient Void Seekers had broken through the Young's legacies. Failing shields, dark tentacles reached into the ship's hull, seeking to drain its power and stop the cascade. Dr. Kim worked frantically at his control station, adjusting the generator's frequency to counter the Void Seekers' adaptation. I need 3 more minutes to lock in the final cascade pattern. 3 minutes and the effect will become permanent. You have your 3 minutes, Captain Lee announced. She activated the ship's self-destruct sequence and locked out all override commands. Everyone else, get to the escape pods now. The crew evacuation began immediately, but it was too late for many. The Void Seekers' dark energy was spreading through the ship, draining power from life support systems. Dozens of crew members collapsed. As their life energy was consumed, Admiral Park reached the escape pod bay to find Dr. Kim still at his station. Doctor, we have to go. Almost finished, Kim replied, his hands flying over the controls. The cascade pattern is stabilizing. If I can just lock it in place. A massive shockwave threw both men to the floor. The ancient Void Seekers had begun a coordinated assault on the Young's legacy, trying to destroy the generator before it could complete its work. Cascade locked, Kim announced triumphantly. The effect is now self-sustaining. Nothing can stop it. Park helped the scientist to his feet, and they ran toward the last escape pod. Behind them, Captain Lee's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. This is Captain Lee Ga-young of the Terran battleship Young's Legacy. The cascade generator is now permanently active. All Void Seekers in the galaxy will be forced back to dark matter space within the next hour. The Milky Way is saved. The escape pod launched just as the Young's Legacy exploded. The blast was visible throughout the galactic center, a brilliant flash of light that seemed to drive back the surrounding darkness. The cascade effect spread outward from the explosion point like ripples in a pond. Wherever the dimensional waves touched, Void Seekers screamed and vanished. The ancient creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years were being pulled back to their dark matter realm, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 1,100 ships that had started the mission, only 43 survived. Thousands of brave beings had given their lives to save the galaxy. Among the survivors, Admiral Park floated in his escape pod and watched the Void Seekers disappear. The massive creatures around the galactic center were fighting the cascade effect, but they were losing. One by one, even the ancient moon-sized devourers were pulled back into dark space. This is Admiral Park to all surviving vessels, he broadcast. Mission accomplished. The galaxy is secure. The response came not just from the few surviving ships, but from throughout the galaxy. Human colonies, Karathi fortress worlds, Verdani garden planets, and dozens of other species sent messages of celebration and gratitude. But the most surprising response came from the evacuation fleets in Andromeda Galaxy. Elder Vexhai of the IDF Eldari sent a formal message to Admiral Park. Young human, we owe you an apology. We saw your species as primitive children playing with dangerous toys. We were wrong. Your courage and ingenuity have accomplished what our advanced technology could not. The Eldari offer our eternal friendship and alliance. Similar messages arrived from the Quantari, the Thexians, and dozens of other species. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were asking to return home under human protection. Dr. Song Mi-kyung, who had survived aboard one of the Verdani living ships, made an important discovery while analyzing the cascade's effects. Admiral, the dimensional barriers between our reality and dark matter space have been permanently reinforced. The Void Seekers cannot return to our galaxy ever again. What about other galaxies? Park asked. The cascade effect is spreading beyond the Milky Way. It will reach the Andromeda evacuation fleets within 6 months. Every galaxy in the local cluster will be protected from Void Seeker incursions. This news created excitement throughout the universe. Humanity had not just saved their own galaxy. but had protected every civilization in the cosmic neighborhood. The return journey to Earth took 3 weeks. As the surviving ships approached the Sol system, they found something extraordinary waiting for them. The evacuation fleets had returned early, unwilling to wait in Andromeda while their rescuers came home. President An Jiwoo stood at the landing platform as Admiral Park's shuttle touched down. The small woman who had refused to abandon Earth now welcomed back the heroes who had saved everything. "Admiral Park, on behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I thank you for your service," she said formally. Then she smiled and added, "Welcome home." The celebration lasted for weeks. Representatives from over 300 species came to Earth to offer thanks and alliance. The Galactic Confederation was reformed with humanity as its leading member, not through conquest but through the simple demonstration that some things were worth any sacrifice. But Admiral Park knew the real victory was simpler than galactic politics. Humanity had proven that when the wise declared something impossible, ordinary people could find a way to make it possible. Dr. Kim Tae-ho established the Institute for Impossible Solutions, dedicated to solving problems that conventional wisdom said could not be solved. Engineer Park Nari began working on new technologies that combined human ingenuity with alien knowledge. The galaxy was safe, but more importantly, it had learned something valuable. Advanced technology was powerful, but courage and determination were more powerful still. When the cosmos itself refused to help, sometimes the most primitive solution was the most effective one. The Void Seekers were gone forever, banished to spaces between realities where 5 years had passed since the Great Cascade, as historians now called humanity's victory over the Void Seekers. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Where once advanced alien civilizations had led the Galactic Confederation, now humans found themselves at the center of galactic politics and science. Admiral Park Hyun-woo, now promoted to Fleet Admiral and Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense, stood in his office overlooking New Geneva Spaceport. Through the massive windows, he watched ships from dozens of species loading supplies for the newest human colony ships. The galaxy was expanding again, with humans leading the way into previously unexplored regions. "Sir, the memorial ceremony is ready to begin," announced his aide, Commander Yoon Hae-won. The young officer had been promoted after showing exceptional skill during the reconstruction efforts. Park nodded and straightened his dress uniform. Today marked the 5th anniversary of Captain Lee Ga-young's sacrifice and the victory over the Void Seekers. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy had come to Earth for the remembrance ceremony. The memorial site had grown into something extraordinary. What had started as a simple garden with carved names had become a vast park, covering several square kilometers. Each fallen hero was remembered, not just with a name, but with a living monument that reflected their contribution to the galaxy's salvation. Captain Lee's memorial was the centerpiece, a fountain that used controlled gravity fields to create water sculptures that defied physics. The water flowed upward in spirals, forming shapes that reminded viewers of the cascade effect that had saved them all. President An Ji-woo, now in her 2nd term as Earth's leader and the first human to serve as Confederation Chancellor, took the stage before an audience of thousands. Representatives from over 400 species filled the amphitheater, more than had ever gathered in one place before. 5 years ago, the greatest minds in the galaxy told us that survival meant abandonment. President An began. They said, the wise choice was to run, to save ourselves and let the Milky Way die. But humanity has never been particularly wise in the traditional sense. Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. The joke had become a running theme in human diplomacy. Other species had logic and advanced technology, but humans had stubbornness and the refusal to accept defeat. We chose to stand and fight, not because we thought we could win, but because running away felt wrong. We could not save ourselves while abandoning everyone else. That choice led us to discoveries that changed how we understand the universe itself. In the audience, Dr. Kim Tae-ho sat with his research team from the Institute for Impossible Solutions. Their work had revolutionized galactic science, proving that many things considered impossible were simply problems that required different approaches. The Void Seekers taught us that advanced does not always mean better, the president continued. Sometimes the simple solution works when complex ones fail. Sometimes primitive technology is exactly what you need to solve an ancient problem. The ceremony continued with speeches from alien leaders who had once dismissed humanity as too primitive to matter. Elder Vexhai of the Eldari spoke about how human unpredictability had broken through millennia of stagnant thinking. The Quantari chief mathematician admitted that human engineering had achieved results their perfect equations said were impossible. But the most moving speech came from General Takmor of the Karathi. The massive warrior had become one of humanity's closest allies and friends. 5 years ago, I thought humans were weak because they used simple weapons, Takmor said in his deep voice. I learned that true strength comes not from having the best technology, but from never giving up when others say you should. Humans taught the galaxy that courage is the most advanced technology of all. After the formal ceremony, Park walked through the memorial gardens with Dr. Kim. The scientist had aged considerably in the past 5 years, but his eyes still held the same curiosity that had led to the Cascade generator's development. Any regrets about staying behind when the others evacuated? Park asked. Kim smiled. How could I regret being part of the greatest scientific discovery in galactic history? We proved that the universe still has surprises for those willing to look. For them, what is your team working on now? We are studying the long-term effects of the Cascade. The dimensional barriers we created are more complex than we originally understood. They may have applications beyond just keeping Void Seekers out. They paused at a memorial dedicated to the crews of the Outer Rim defense stations. These were the humans who had first tested the resonance nullifiers and phase torpedoes. Their sacrifice had made all later victories possible. Do you think we really saved the galaxy or just postponed its destruction? Park asked. We did more than save it, Kim replied. We changed it. The Cascade effect has created new forms of matter and energy that never existed before. Young civilizations are evolving in ways that would have been impossible in the old universe. We did not just prevent destruction, we enabled creation. As evening approached, Park made his way to the spaceport where a special ceremony was taking place. The first ships of the New Frontier Fleet were departing for the Andromeda Galaxy. Not as refugees this time, but as explorers and colonists. Captain Han Sol B, sister of the hero who had first tested the Cascade generator, commanded the flagship. Her ship, the New Soul's Hope, was a perfect example of how human technology had evolved. It combined human engineering with the best ideas from allied species, creating something that was greater than the sum of its parts. Ready for departure, Admiral, Captain Han reported. Proceed when ready, Captain, and remember, you are not just representing humanity out there, you are representing everyone who refused to surrender. The New Frontier Fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the void between galaxies. They carried with them not just human colonists, but volunteers from dozens of species who wanted to help build new worlds in Andromeda. Park remained at the spaceport long after the ships had departed, watching the stars. Each point of light represented worlds that were still alive because humans had chosen to fight rather than run. The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but it was also inspiring. His personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender identification made him smile. It was from the research station at the Galactic Center, where scientists from many species worked together to study the Cascade's effects. Admiral Park, this is Dr. Song Mi-kyung reporting from Galactic Center Station. We have made an incredible discovery. The Cascade effect has created what we can only call a galactic immune system. If any similar threat ever appears, the galaxy itself will now be able to defend against it automatically. Park read the message twice to make sure he understood correctly. Not only had humanity saved the galaxy from the Void Seekers, but they had made it permanently resistant to such threats. The crude human solution had accomplished something no advanced technology had ever achieved. Sometimes the best defense is not the most sophisticated one, Park murmured to himself. Sometimes it is just the one that refuses to give up. The next morning brought news that would reshape galactic politics once again. The Confederation Council had voted to establish the Humanity Doctrine, a new approach to solving galactic problems. When conventional wisdom declared something impossible, human scientists and engineers would be given the resources to attempt it anyway. Ambassador Lee So-young, now serving as the Confederation's Secretary of Impossible Solutions, explained the doctrine to the galactic media. "We have learned that impossibility is often just another word for approach we have not tried yet," she said. "The humanity doctrine recognizes that breakthrough solutions frequently come from those who do not know enough to realize they should fail." The doctrine was already being applied to problems throughout the galaxy. Human teams were working on reversing the aging process for the ancient Eldari. They were developing new forms of communication that could reach civilizations in distant galaxies. They were even attempting to create artificial intelligence that could solve problems no organic mind could comprehend. Each project was considered impossible by conventional standards. Each project was exactly the kind of challenge humans seemed to excel at. In his final log entry as Supreme Commander, Admiral Park reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day when the Confederation decided to abandon the Milky Way. "We started as the galaxy's least advanced species," he wrote. "We had the slowest ships, the weakest weapons, and the most primitive technology. But we also had something that more advanced civilizations had lost: the absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible." The Void Seekers were not defeated by superior firepower or elegant science. They were defeated by stubborn determination and the willingness to try solutions that smarter beings knew could not work. Today, humanity leads a galaxy of 400 species, not because we conquered anyone, but because we proved that courage and ingenuity matter more than age or technology. We showed the universe that when the cosmos itself refuses to help, ordinary people can still find a way to save everyone. Park sealed the log entry and prepared for retirement. His replacement, Admiral Choi Min-ho, was already